On October 13th, 1972, a flight leaves Mendoza, Argentina, heading for Santiago, Chile. Sounds pretty routine, right?
Yeah, a completely normal flight plan.
On boards are 45 people, a Uruguayan rugby team, the Old Christians Club, plus friends, family, just heading over for a match and a short trip. But this wasn't a normal trip, not at all. This flight, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, became, well, one of the most harrowing survival stories ever recorded, the Andes disaster.
Absolutely. And that's what we're diving into today.
We really want to understand the impossible choices they face and just the incredible resilience shown.
Exactly. We're going to trace the journey of that plane, the Fairchild FH-222070.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was actually forced to stay overnight in Mendoza because of bad weather over the Andes.
Right. So they took off the next day on the 13th.
They did. And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to follow what happened from that takeoff through those 72 days in the mountains, the decisions, the survival, right up to the rescue.
Okay, let's get into it. So 45 people totaled the team, loved ones, 5 crew members. They leave Mendoza. What went wrong so quickly?
Well, the key problem was navigation. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Dante Lagura, he mistakenly thought they'd already cleared the main Andes range. He believed they were past Curacao in Chile.
Oh, so he thought they were basically over the mountains.
Yeah, exactly. So he started the descent procedure way too early. The plane was still deep within the high peaks.
And the result?
The aircraft flew into cloud cover, then clipped a mountain ridge. It sheared off the right wing first, which then hit the tail section, tearing that off too. Then the left wing went.
Oh my God.
The fuselage, basically just the main tube of the plane, hit the snow and started sliding down a glacier at incredible speed, maybe over 200 miles an hour.
Unbelievable.
Until it finally slammed into a huge mound of ice and snow, and it stopped. They were at about 3,660 meters. That's roughly 12,000 feet up.
Okay, so the impact itself. You said 45 people started the flight. What was the immediate toll?
It was devastating.
Yeah.
12 people died, either during the crash sequence or on impact.
12 right away.
Yeah. And then in those first terrible hours and the following day, another 5 people died from their injuries. And that's just the extreme cold. It's incredibly cold at that altitude.
Leaving. 27 survivors initially.
27, yes. Huddled inside what was left of the fuselage. That broken shell became their sort of makeshift shelter.
And rescue efforts, did they start quickly?
They did. Planes from Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, they all searched. They flew over the area several times, but they couldn't see them. The white plane fuselage against the vast white snow, it was basically invisible from the air.
Oh, the camouflage effect.
Exactly. And after 8 days of searching with no sightings, the official search was called off.
8 days. Imagine being down there, seeing planes, hoping, and then silence. How did they find out the search was over?
Through a small transistor radio one of the survivors had. They heard the news.
Oh, that must have been just a crushing blow. To hear you've been given up for dead?
Absolutely devastating. It shifted everything. Any hope of external rescue just vanished.
So what did that mean for them? How did they adapt, knowing they were totally alone?
Well, it forced them to rely completely on themselves. They became incredibly organized, actually. These luggage, seats, bits of the plane wreckage to kind of seal up the fuselage against the cold.
Trying to make a real shelter.
Trying to make it survivable, yeah. And food. They had some chocolates, some snacks, a few tins of mussels, some wine. Very little.
How long did that last?
They rationed it incredibly strictly, but maybe a week. A little more. It ran out very, very quickly.
Which brings us to, I think, the part of the story that most people know or have heard about. The most difficult choice imaginable.
Yes. Starvation started to set in. Real starvation.
Yeah.
And they were faced with this terrible reality. The only potential source of sustenance was the bodies of their friends, their teammates, who had died in the crash and were preserved in the snow.
And these were devout people, right? Mostly Roman Catholic. The idea must have been abhorrent.
Absolutely abhorrent. There was intense debate, anguish, prayer. Some argued it was morally impossible. Others, particularly Roberto Canessa, who was a medical student, argued it was their only chance, that the dead would want them to live.
How did they resolve it?
Eventually, they made a pact, a collective decision, that if they died, the others could use their bodies to survive. It was a truly harrowing agreement.
Some survivors later described it almost like a form of communion, didn't they? A kind of ultimate sacrifice.
Yes, some did frame it that way, trying to reconcile it with their faith. It was done with immense reluctance, immense psychological trauma, obviously. but it kept them alive. It became the only way.
It really makes you question, doesn't it? What are the absolute limits of human endurance and what holds a community together in that kind of desperation?
It does. And it wasn't a single easy decision. There were varying degrees of acceptance, ongoing struggles. But that shared act, that necessity, forged an incredibly powerful interdependence among them.
You mentioned Roberto Canessa, the medical student, playing a key role. Were there other leaders who emerged, or is it more of a collective effort?
There were definitely figures who stepped up. Nando Parrado, who lost his mother and sister in the crash, became incredibly focused on escape. The team captain, Marcelo Perez, initially led, but he died in the avalanche later. It became more collective, but figures like Parrado and Canessa were certainly driving forces, especially later on.
So they make this unthinkable choice. They find a way to sustain themselves. But the Andes weren't done with them yet. 16 days after the crash, something else happened.
Yes. On October 29th, while many were sleeping inside the fuselage, disaster struck again.
What was it?
An avalanche. Maybe two, one after the other. A huge mass of snow came crashing down the mountain and completely buried the fuselage.
Buried them inside.
Filled it almost entirely. 8 more people were killed instantly, suffocated by the snow. It was horrific. Another brutal loss.
How did the others survive being buried alive?
The snow packed in around them. There was only a tiny pocket of air left near the cockpit area. They were trapped in darkness under the snow for days.
How did they get out?
Nando Parrado managed to find a metal pole from the luggage racks and painstakingly poked it upwards until he broke through the snow crust above the cockpit window. That let some air in. Then they had to dig their way out.
Just relentlessly facing one impossible situation after another.
And when they finally got out, they were hit by a severe blizzard that lasted for several more days, trapping them near the wreckage again.
So after the avalanche, how many were left?
Just 19 survivors remained at that point.
19. Out of the original 45, enduring the crash, starvation, the moral crisis, an avalanche. It's hard to even comprehend. How did any hope remain?
Well, I think the avalanche, paradoxically, might have strengthened the resolve of some, particularly Parrado. It became clear that staying there lightly meant death. They had to get out.
So this leads to the final desperate plan, the trek.
Exactly. Nando Parrado and Roberto Canessa became convinced that the only way was to hike out. They needed someone strong enough to attempt it. Antonio Vizintin initially joined them too, to carry extra supplies.
What did they have to prepare for something like that? I mean, they had no real mountaineering gear.
Almost nothing. They were incredibly resourceful, though. They used seat covers and insulation from the plane's heating system stitched together with copper wire to create a makeshift sleeping bag. That was crucial for surviving the nights.
Okay, so they have a sleeping bag. When did they set off?
On December 12th, almost 2 months after the crash, they started climbing west towards what they hoped was Chile.
Describe that journey. What did it actually involve?
It was just monumental. They climbed for 3 incredibly grueling days, up steep, snow-covered slopes, no proper shoes, no axes, just determination. They reached a high ridge.
How high?
About 4,500 meters, nearly 14,800 feet. And from there, Parrado saw more mountains, endless peaks stretching west. He realized Chile was much further than they thought.
Oh, that must have been a moment of despair.
It was. But Parrado made a crucial decision. He saw a smaller valley leading downwards. They decided to send Vizintin back to the fuselage to conserve their meager food supplies, and Parrado and Canessa would continue alone.
Just the two of them. How far did they actually trek?
They trekked for another 7 days, down through that valley system, about 33, 34 miles maybe, through incredibly harsh, unforgiving terrain, exhausted, starving, but just kept going.
Their resilience is just off the charts.
Absolutely. And then finally, they started seeing signs of civilization, some cattle, a fence line.
And then they found someone.
They reached a river, the Azufre, and on the other side they saw 3 men on horseback, Chilean herdsmen, arrieros.
Wow, after all that time, how did they even communicate across the river?
They couldn't hear each other well over the water's noise, so Parrado wrote a note. He tied it to a rock and threw it across.
The famous note, what did it say?
It was simple and direct. Something like, "I come from a plane that fell in the mountains. I am Uruguayan. We have been walking for 10 days. We have 14 injured people up there. We need help. We haven't eaten." Signed Nando Parrado.
Just imagine the reaction of those herdsmen.
One of them, Sergio Catalan, rode for hours to get help. The message got through. And finally, on December 22nd, helicopters reached the crash site.
72 days after the crash.
72 days. They rescued half the remaining survivors that day and the other half the next day, December 23rd, because of weather and altitude limits for the helicopters.
So in the end, 16 people survived out of 45.
16 survivors. An unbelievable testament to their will to live.
And the story obviously became massive news worldwide, but it's more than just a survival story, isn't it? There's a lasting legacy here.
Oh, absolutely. It immediately led to the book Alive by Piers Paul Reed in 1974, which became a huge bestseller, and several films over the years.
Including the recent one, Society of the Snow.
Yes, Society of the Snow from 2023, which has been really praised for its authenticity and sticking closely to the survivors' accounts, using many of their own words. It's a very respectful portrayal.
But beyond the books and films, the survivors themselves, they didn't just disappear back into normal life, did they?
No, not at all. Many have spoken extensively about their experiences. They've formed foundations, established memorials at the crash site, which people still visit. It's a sort of pilgrimage site. And there are museums in Uruguay dedicated to the story.
It feels like they use that intense bond forged in the mountains to kind of give back or make meaning out of the tragedy.
I think that's very true. There's a deep sense of unity and shared purpose that still connects them. They understand what they went through in a way no one else possibly can. Their story highlights not just individual endurance, but the power of a community, even one formed under the most horrific pressure imaginable.
Yeah, it really does redefine what a community can achieve, doesn't it? Even when facing the absolute impossible.
Definitely. If you look at the bigger picture, Flight 571 is this incredibly profound, raw example of how extreme adversity forces people. Forces them to make agonizing choices, yes, but also pushes them way beyond perceived limits, physically and mentally.
And reveals this maybe hidden capacity we all have for helping each other, for resilience.
Exactly. It shows us humanity stripped bare, both fragility and that extraordinary, almost unbelievable strength.
So, thinking about this whole story, for you listening, when you face challenges in your own life, maybe things that feel overwhelming or isolating, what can you possibly take away from this?
Yeah, what inspiration can you find in the sheer courage and that intense unity the survivors showed?
How might their story make you think about your own reserves of strength? That deep down resilience, that ability to connect and support others, even when things seem impossible, maybe strength you didn't even know you had.